The live aspect of music tends to generate more money sometimes than the creative aspect of writing and selling sheet music. Hey guys, what's up? My name is Andre and I'm a classical pianist, and the topic of today is to compose or not to compose. That is the question. If you're stumbling upon this video, there's a high chance that you're a classical musician who has probably been asked by everybody who doesn't do classical music that you should compose, and it's exhausting. Now, before I get into any of that, I do want to say I think that composing is important. I'm not going to understate its value. I think that as a musician, you should be able to, in the very least, improvise ideas that aren't necessarily within the music, depending on the context, of course. But it really does improve your musicianship when you're able to pull things out of a hat and say, like, okay, I don't know, if I'm playing a church song, for example, you can add some extra harmonies that necessarily aren't in the music, and it typically enhances the whole vibe of the entire service or whatever it is that you're doing. So I do think it's important, but from a classical musician standpoint, it has its challenges. But before I get started, make sure that you like and subscribe so that you can continue getting more videos like this. Alright, so the topic of today's video is to compose or not to compose. The thing is that it's hard. Well, not really, but the thing about composing is that as a classical musician, at least when you're being trained how to read notes and whatnot, they don't usually focus on improvising or on composing. You really get to that unless you show an interest or unless you somehow take the initiative and kind of teach yourself how to do it. Now, I'm not going to say that that it's easy or anything like that. For some people, they have a natural knack for it, and some other people have to work harder. They have to compose a lot of bad music, if you want to call it that, until they start to get really good music. And that's where theory kind of comes into place, because it can show you the traditional avenues of harmony as we've known them for the past 300, 400 years. But overall, I mean, nowadays especially, you can compose anything, and I mean, you can compose some really insane things, and not necessarily like tonal. You know, it could be atonal, it could be dissonant, and if it's I guess marketed correctly or something, it can do well. You know, there's a lot of avant-garde music, which, if you don't know what avant-garde is basically modern music that pushes the boundaries. Now, that's my definition of it. I'm not using a dictionary for this, so don't quote me on it. But yeah, that's what I think about composition and classical musicians as we are. Now, in the past, I have been told by a lot of people, like I remember one time at my day job, I was working, and this lady she actually raised my mom for a small portion of her life. And I told her, I was like, oh, hey, I'm, this lady's son, da, 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 and whatnot. And she was like, oh, okay, and what do you do? I'm like, oh, I'm a musician, I'm a pianist. And she's like, oh, do you compose? And I was like, no. And she was like, okay, you should make time and compose. And I was like, okay, sure, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I'll try. But the difficulty in composing is not that it's hard. I mean, yes, it is when you try and write like a symphony or something, but it's not necessarily hard from a technical standpoint. I could sit down, write a 4-bar phrase, boom, I'm a composer. But when you learn theory, and especially when you're not taught certain things as to how to compose or where it comes from, that's where you will find a stumbling block, and it's going to block you from wanting to start composing or to continue composing if that's something that you're doing. So in today's culture, we have this idea that if you don't compose, if you don't create, you're not a creative person. And it's just not the case, because being an interpreter, even though it's not necessarily the most creative thing of all, it has some creativity, and it has a lot of creativity to it, and you have to be able to bring out in the music things that maybe the composer wasn't even intending, but because of your dedication and your consistency in learning this music and learning it in different ways, you're able to bring out these things, and the people tend to love these things a lot. Now, one of the reasons why I personally think that people, at least classical musicians nowadays, don't compose as much as they used to back in the 18th, 19th, 17th, maybe 16th century. The reason why we don't compose, if anything at all, is because the role of the classical musician has changed drastically. At least from what I can recall, in the times of J.S. Bach, and probably afterwards, a couple hundred years later as well, musicians, they would be the composers of their own works. They would also interpret their own works. They would be their own promoters, if you want to call it that. Well, they had to find like a sponsorship, or somebody to basically sponsor them in their work. It wasn't just like nowadays where you can upload a video, and if somebody likes you, they can find you like fund you with a Patreon. It didn't work that way. It was a lot different. But the role of the musician changed, and it began changing, I think, mainly because music as an art form, even though it's valued, the live aspect of music tends to generate more money sometimes than the creative aspect of writing and selling sheet music. For example, if I were to, let's say, do a concert of all of Ravel's works, right? Or let's say I'm going to do a concert of, let's say, of Jadot, which I actually have here, Miroir, or Mirrors, the Mirror Suite, if you want to call it that, and let's say I don't know, Beethoven Concerto. If I was to do a recital with that, I don't know how it makes the pieces, but if I was to make a recital of that, I feel like that would sell a lot more than if I wrote my own version of Jadot, or something similar, and my own version of the Mirrors Suite, like, and a concerto. That would not sell as best, unless of course you've made a name for yourself, you've marketed yourself and done all these things to make sure that all of that works. But in and of itself, writing music is not as appreciated, I think, by audiences, and that's the reason why live events tend to bring in more money, and that's why musicians aren't as they focus more on that aspect. Even though they're not seen as creative, you're technically, you don't have to work as hard as creating a product. You can, the product, the sheet music has already been made, but the finished product, which is the concert, that can be sold, and it can be done in many areas. There's scarcity. You can only, let's say you're only doing 10 concerts, and they're in two in Asia, two in Europe, two in North America, or whatever. There's scarcity, so people will pay, especially if you're really good. They'll pay for you to go for you to go play, and all these things. So it's very different than if you make sheet music, you upload it, unless you find a way of like preventing piracy. Let's say you write the sheet music and you ship it directly to the person's house, then there's scarcity. But then of course they can always scan it, upload it, and then there goes your copyright. But you can, the idea that you can write a sonata, sell it, and then make money off of that, honestly, nowadays, it's kind of laughable. If you do that, more power to you. I'm not going to put you down in any way. If you want to do that, go for it. But be smart about it. Learn about how you can protect your work with copyright laws, how you can prevent people from essentially stealing the hard work that you do, so that you can make a living off of it. So be smart about it, but I'm not putting anybody down in any way. If you want to write sonatas, you want to write symphonies, you want to sell the sheet music, go for it. The world needs more people like that. But I'm just trying to talk about why the creative aspect is often, or the interpretive aspect is often put down, but also why it makes a lot more sense for us to do it. Okay, so I don't know if this video so far is making sense. If it is, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, let me know. I didn't write a script for this video. I've been marinating on this topic for a while and kind of just putting my thoughts together and hoping that it kind of makes sense. I'm trying to have this like if I was like having a conversation with a friend. But if you're enjoying it, give it a thumbs up, and let me see if I can come up with more things. People will often tell me, oh, you should compose, right? And I'm like, okay, well, sure, I guess I'll try it, I'll do it, right, whatnot. And then I don't do it because I have so many pieces to work on, so many things that require your attention. And the thing is that most people won't understand the amount of work that goes into an interpretation. They think that you just, oh yeah, I'm just gonna open the sheet music, read it, and it's already there. And To some degree, yes, there is, some idea of like, okay, the sheet music is here. This telling me, Ravel tells me a decrescendo, forte, decrescendo again, mezzo forte. Yes, but if you think about it, how many recordings of a piece are there? From how many artists? You have, for example, all the piano works of Beethoven recorded by Alfred Brendel, and he recorded them, I believe, 5 times in his life. Which, if you don't know how monumental of a task that is, so Beethoven wrote 32 Beethoven sonatas. He wrote 5 piano concertos, including a choral thing. I want to say it's a choral. It's a choral. It's basically a concerto with a choir. I'm not too sure, but Beethoven wrote a lot of music. Each sonata is about 20 to 30 minutes long. Some might even be longer. And Alfred Brendel recorded this 5 times in his life, and I'm pretty sure. I mean, I don't think he copy pasted any of the prior recordings. I'm pretty sure he had the intentionality of maybe thinking about phrasing differently and all of these things. And I guess that's what I want to get to. People tend not to know what goes into an interpretation. And usually they think, okay, everything's on the page, so I'm just going to do that. But no, you see a lot of these symbols that we know. For example, if I take out like a well-tempered clavier, especially if you get an Urtext edition, which if you don't know what an Urtext is, well, it's like one of these. It'll usually tell you like Urtext, but what it really tells you, it shows you the editor leaves out as many notes or any additions that might have been added either by the original editor or something. So they study as many handwritten sources, as many sketches, as many things from the composer in order to create a version that is untouched by man. Basically, it's like the Fiji water of sheet music, if you want to call it that. And for the most part, I buy a lot of Henley. I have some Baron writers and some other Alfred. Oh, what is it? Alfred music. Those are pretty good. It just depends what editions you get and what editorial notes they have. But for the most part, they're good. Now, the thing about the sheet music, for example, is that sometimes, I mean, that's the reason musicology is a thing, I want to say, because we don't exactly know what some of the symbols or ornaments mean. I mean, yes, there's tradition that carries on, and that's how you figure out, oh, Bach wanted this specific ornament, like or I don't know, something. I mean, these symbols can be really interpreted in a different way based on the style. And so that's part of the work that goes into being an interpreter. You have to decide, okay, am I going to play this trill like this? Or am I going to play like... There's little subtle things that most people will not say. They will not talk about that. At the end of the concert, they'll tell you, "Oh, you sounded so great." But some musicians will say, "Oh, he didn't do the trill X amount of times. He didn't do this or that," unless they're they're really critical. But that's the idea. A lot of interpreting things, or a lot of the task of interpreting is it's creative because you have to think about phrasing. You have to think about, okay, for example, in judo you have you tend to have a lot of phrasing lines here, but you also have to think, okay, how am I going to voice it? Is the phrasing going to go this way? Is it going to increase in volume? Is it going to decrescendo? How am I going to bring all of these things out so that it sounds like a new and fresh way that also respects the traditional way of playing, but also belongs to me? It's also something that I am bringing into the equation. And that's what interpretation is. Interpretation is saying, okay, how can I combine the tradition and how can I combine the new of me together to create this new version? To compose or not to compose? Well, my answer would be this. I think that if you're a musician, you should at least, like I said, try and improvise, or at the very least, compose for yourself. For example, all of us can read and write. Does it mean we go around writing books? No, it doesn't. But if you keep a diary, if you keep a journal, that helps you so that you can get your thoughts together. Same thing with writing music. It doesn't necessarily have to be the most luscious melody. It doesn't have to be the most cohesive thing. The chord progressions could be all out of order. It doesn't matter. But the idea is try and compose at least something small every day, whether it's a 4-bar phrase, whether it's, a four chord, chord progression, something. Compose it so that you can develop your internal voice. And that'll help you to understand, okay, if I want to do this with the music, and then when you reference that back to something that another composer did, it can help you to understand, oh, this composer was thinking about phrasing this way, so I'm going to start to phrase this way. And then you can kind of copy off of him some things, and you go back and forth, and you steal inspiration from all these different sources to eventually create your own voice. And that's all I have to say about that, because I'm out of ideas. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you so much. I did not make a script. I feel like this video is going to be super all over the place. If you stayed, to the end and you're watching this, thank you so much. Remember to leave a like, leave a comment if you can, and please subscribe so that you can continue to see more content like this. It really helps me out. But in the end, to compose or not to compose, that's up to you.